Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the actual everyday realities of LGBTQ plus youth in our schools right now. We'll be pulling straight from the brand new data in the 2025 Glisten National School Climate Survey. Now, this is the longest running survey of its kind, and the goal of this report is really to push past those simplistic black and white narratives and look at what the numbers and the students themselves are actually telling us. But, before we get lost in the statistics, the report really grounds us in the human element. Just listen to this quote from an 18-year-old in a trans femme focus group. "Safety for me isn't just no bullying. It's being able to exist without shrinking myself." I mean, that really hits the nail on the head. For these students, safety isn't just the absence of a threat. It's the freedom to fully exist. They're navigating this incredibly complex web of hostility and hope every single day. So keep that student's perspective in the back of your mind as we go through this data. To wrap our heads around this, here's our roadmap. We'll look at their complex lived reality, dig into the safety and harassment data, explore the impact of educators and policy, check out peer connection, and finally, look at how to create affirming schools. All right, part 1, a complex lived reality defying singular narratives. The report totally rejects the idea that these students fit neatly into one single box, that they're purely victims or purely resilient heroes. And they know this because they asked a lot of them. We're looking at survey responses from nearly 3,000 LGBTQ plus students ages 13 and up from the 2023-2024 school year. Plus, to make sure marginalized voices weren't lost in the shuffle, Glisten ran in-depth focus groups with 36 participants during the 24-25 school year. So we're getting a highly detailed, incredibly current snapshot of what's going down in the hallways right now. And right away, the survey highlights this wild tension these kids are living in. On one hand, a massive majority, 67%, felt unsafe at school at some point because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. But then, right alongside that hostility, 1 in 3 students report that they actually frequently or often look forward to school. Why? Because of their friends, a supportive teacher, or a favorite class. It's this striking duality, right? They're constantly navigating danger, but still actively seeking out joy and connection. Which brings us to part 2, safety, harassment, and discrimination, the landscape of hostility. When we look at the harassment data, the report really leans into a crucial concept, intersectionality. Coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, this is the idea that different social identities, like your race, your gender, your disability, overlap to create completely unique compounding challenges. So the data shows us that LGBTQ plus students of color aren't just facing homophobia or transphobia. They're experiencing this really complex, heavy layering of marginalization all at once. And the numbers here are frankly pretty stark. 68% of respondents experienced harassment or assault based on their gender identity or expression. 62% faced it due to their sexual orientation. And crucially, looking at that intersectionality we just talked about, 48% of BIPOC LGBTQ plus students experienced verbal or physical harassment or assault specifically because of their race or ethnicity. So the hostility isn't just widespread, it's multi-layered. All of this hostility actually translates into a physical, spatial reality for these students. A staggering 86% of trans and gender-expansive students actively avoid certain areas in their own schools. Think about that for a second. School isn't just an open campus for them. It's literally a map of safe zones and danger zones. And the most commonly avoided spaces? Bathrooms, locker rooms, and PE classes. So what does that 86% actually look like in practice? Well, here's a quote from a 19-year-old student in Georgia. They said they might hold it and not go to the bathroom for the entire day simply because there were no clear policies about where they were actually allowed to go. The report points out that this means students are sitting there enduring physical discomfort, totally distracted from their education, all because of unclear or discriminatory policies. It's also absolutely vital that we broaden our understanding of who is being affected here. Intersex students face incredibly unique forms of discrimination. For a quick refresher, intersex refers to people born with variations in internal or external anatomy, hormones, or chromosomes that just don't neatly fit traditional ideas of male or female bodies. Recognizing this specific group is crucial when we start talking about inclusive spaces and curriculums. The report actually points out a wild example of how non-inclusive curriculum actively harms these students. An intersex student in Mississippi shared that for a genetics project, their teacher assigned being intersex as a quote-unquote birth defect. When the student presented their project and accurately stated it was not a birth defect, the teacher actually penalized them with a low grade. It's literally an example of the educational system penalizing a student for accurately describing their own lived reality. Moving into part 3, the educator and policy impact and the structural difference they make. You know, most schools have anti-bullying policies, right? About 83% of them do. But here's the catch. A mere 33%, just 1/3 of schools, explicitly include protections for sexual orientation and gender identity. The vast majority of these policies are just partial, generic, or completely missing these crucial protections for the students who need them most. And the data shows this creates a massive divergence in how students perform. It's like a fork in the road. When schools have comprehensive policies and 6 or more supportive staff members, the results are incredible. Higher GPAs, lower absenteeism, and a much stronger sense of belonging. But on the flip side, partial policies and a lack of supportive staff directly correlate with a lower sense of belonging and way more safety concerns. The structure of the school environment itself is dictating student success. Let's look at part 4, peer connection and community, finding joy and protection. When the system fails them, what do these students do? They build their own safety nets. This statistic really speaks volumes. When students experienced harassment but didn't report it to staff, usually because they figured the staff wouldn't do anything anyway, a massive 72% turned to their peers for protection instead. They are literally forming their own solidarity networks, creating chosen families right there in the hallways to keep each other safe. And I absolutely love this anecdote from an 18-year-old trans femme student that just perfectly captures the energy of this community. They talked about how a younger student came up to them, questioning their own gender, just because they saw them living authentically on the tough days. Students are protecting each other, they're stepping up in GSAs, and they're providing visible hope. Like this student said, visibility isn't just brave, it's transformative. Finally, part 5, creating affirming schools, the path forward. When asked what needs to change, the students in the focus groups didn't hold back, and they aren't asking for the moon here. They want gender-inclusive restrooms and transparent policies so they don't have to navigate their school day in fear. They're calling for inclusive curriculum in sex ed and an end to LGBTQ+ book bans. They also emphasized wanting real, restorative accountability for bullies, like sincere apologies and changed behavior, not just throwing a kid in detention. And above all, they're asking for autonomy over their own identities. As Glisten CEO Melanie Willingham-Jaggers emphasizes in the closing statement of the report, safety is not just the absence of harm. Simply keeping a student from getting bullied, that's the bare minimum. True safety is the active affirmation of a student's right to belong, to learn, and to thrive exactly as they are. Which leaves us with this final, absolutely critical question to think about. Whether you're an educator, a parent, a policymaker, or just a concerned citizen, the students have been incredibly clear in this data about what they need. So the question is, are we willing to listen? And are we willing to build schools that don't just quietly tolerate these students, but actively affirm their absolute right to belong? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to go check out the full 2025 report to dig even deeper.